Next speaker, William Benko. William is a Hungarian-American, lived in Budapest since 1990, and he is currently president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Budapest. William introduced the Toastmasters program to Hungary, which is the speech therapist, speech program for public speaking, and he's coached many famous people in this country, politicians, business leaders, students, and also prison inmates on the power of public speaking. And he launched a public speaking program, in fact, for the prison system in Budapest. William is committed to improving the lives of young people throughout the world and has coached and mentored hundreds of youth to help them develop their self-esteem and a life plan. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce William. Thank you.
Great. I trusted my son to give me feedback, so I don't want to go over 18 minutes. I think I'm the second to last speaker before lunch, right? Right. So what you just heard is true. I'm a business guy. I like to develop businesses. I love money. I like to see growth. I like to see people, businesses progress. But I also believe that it's so very important to find an area in life and give back. One of the areas where I like to give back is in working with youth and those people who didn't have the set of chances that I had, or maybe the rest of us had this room. And so I started years ago a program in the penal system here in Hungary, where I go in with other people and I work with murderers. I do this on a weekly basis. I spend an hour and a half with these people. They're bad people. You know, it's scary to think that you could be in a room with somebody who's been able to extinguish the life of another human being. And yet there's an unbelievable amount of learning that happens in there. And it's not just learning by them, it's also learning by us. So what I want to take you through today is, the title of the speech was, will we ever understand the teenage brain? And I've got some certain medical aspects, because one of my businesses is medicine, and I'm very interested in high tech and what we can do with future and exponential technologies. But today we know how a brain develops. So if you were to ask a child, a teenager, some of us have, I have a teenager, I don't know about the rest of you. I'm assuming you either have one or had one, or will soon have one. And if you ask a teenager when they think that their brain is fully developed, what do you think their answer will be? But give me an age, give me a number.
12.
12? That's pretty aggressive. Right? It's normally around the age of 15 to 16. So if you talk to somebody, by the time they're 16, they are absolutely convinced, I know it all. And, right? Have you experienced it?
Yes.
The truth is, I was there. I was 16, and I could assume that most of you were 16. And there's something magical at 16, especially in the U.S. That's when you get your driver's license. You now start to feel more and more important, and you realize that I just don't want anybody else telling me what to do. Now, medically, with scanning technology today, I can tell when a mind, a brain, reaches a true point of maturity. How old do you think that is? So you can assume it's not 16, right? Otherwise that would be a really short speech and it would be really boring. So if it's not 16, what is it?
25.
It is exactly 25. So about the age of 25, incredible. All right, she's already connected to Google. All right, so you can see that there's 9 years difference, which is a massive amount of time. In fact, mathematically, it's half, 50% of what they've lived is what it takes to become really mature as an adult. And I know as a kid growing up, I had certain ideas and certain dreams that I wanted to reach. And I can tell you today that those aren't the same dreams that I want to reach. But what I do have, and what I was lucky enough to get not only in my childhood and my teen years, but later on in life from some incredible human beings, are the skills to create the momentum to be able to pass through whatever might happen in life. And so the work that I do in the prison system gives me insight into what some of those skills are that those people who didn't get and ended up making the wrong choice because of the lack of that skill, what happens and how tragic that is when a human life basically turns into waste. And one of those skills, when I look at these guys, is, and I don't want to tell you about the exercise and all that stuff, you guys can all figure that out, but there's simply no substitute in finding out early what your passion is and then developing that skill. I, as a kid, grew up, and my parents left Hungary in 1956 and they went to the United States. And my parents didn't speak English well. They were kicked out of the university. In fact, my mother wasn't even admitted. And life was not easy. So back then, and I don't fully understand this, nor do I fully appreciate it, but when they left, they had no idea if they'd ever be back, if they'd ever see their family again. They had no idea that the government would ever change. In fact, most of them would have gone to Las Vegas and put all their money and borrowed some and put it on. It'll never change. But what they did is my father had the skills, the wherewithal, to say, I need to develop something so I can cope in this country. And in his case, he turned to public speaking. So he said, I have no idea how long I'm going to be here, but I want to develop a skill that allows me to communicate with the people in this country so I can at least be on equal footing with these people. And so the only night he was gone from the dinner table was when he went to one of these courses. Once a week, every Thursday night, he was gone. He had dinner with that group. And over the years, he started developing this skill. Now, he never became an unbelievable orator. He's not certainly Martin Luther King. But what he did is he set an example. And as a child, I grew up looking up to those people who could, using nothing other than the spoken word, could change the course of people's lives. You know, there are a lot of things that are happening in the world today from a technology standpoint, but nothing can create a movement like a spoken word. And you can see that in the history of the United States, certainly the part in Europe. Somebody who can actually ignite a group of people can change the course of history. So once I realized what my passion was, and I realized that you need to find a way to use your passion to serve others. So the first thing is we need to encourage our kids, whatever it may be, whether it's public speaking or painting or building things, we need to find a way to encourage it and make it possible for them to do that. And once we do that, they'll take care of the rest. People know on the inside when their heart's beating well and they're just excited about things. You know, so many times as parents we try to break that down because we don't have time for it. He's too excited and leave me alone. But you don't have to send too many of those signals to kids before they start shutting that down. And the worst thing that happens to kids, and it starts kind of, and I certainly don't want to slam anybody who have kids or the kindergartens where other kids may go, but we as adults start to expect our kids to conform, right? We're busy. I want one command to affect 30 kids' lives immediately, and they need to do it when I sit down means everybody sits down. And when I don't get the response I expect, then I start to raise the volume of my voice. And shortly, kids realize, I don't want to hear that, so they stop. So I didn't get that, thankfully, at least not in the area of public speaking, and I started looking for a way to develop that, and then I found a way to start helping others, because I really believe that one of the things that most people miss today, I know they miss it in the U.S., and I think they miss it here at home, is most kids don't have a way to develop their self-confidence. If you have too much self-confidence, we normally call that arrogance, overcompensation. But a healthy amount of self-confidence where you can look at a problem and not immediately assume that life is over and you're going to fail and everything is going to turn out disastrous. And the nice thing about public speaking in my case, and in the case of those that I ended up having an opportunity to work with, public speaking is one of those skills that if you start to improve, you get a spark of self-confidence. So the reason we have the prison program is because we take these people who've been in prison for 15 years. A good murder in Hungary will get you about 14 years. So when they start coming towards their exit time, then we started a program in the last year. It's a re-socialization program. And my job is one thing and one thing only. I'm not their psychologist, I'm not their counselor. All I want to do is create a spark of self-confidence. And if I can do that, then somebody who's a whole lot smarter than I am has something to work with, and there's a smaller, not a huge, but a small chance that they might be able to guide them in the right direction. Because if a person on the inside can't believe that they are capable of a different life, and that holds true for a 30-year-old in jail or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, if I can't believe that I can make an impact or there's value that I can create with my life and my work, then it's going to be really difficult for me to dig myself out of these holes. So the key is, and I gave speeches out down in the countryside yesterday to talk about the effect of what exponential technologies will have on the business model of the church, and where the church needs to get engaged in helping people along these growth curves to create the skill set so they can stay in the game. Because one thing we've all noticed is that things have sped up. So we are now on the growth curve of technologies where things are happening significantly faster than they ever happened before. And the reason it seems like that is because that's exactly what is happening. You know, as a kid, we never had cell phones, right? We were lucky to have color TV. Today, the world, kids are sending 6.5 billion SMSs a day, right? That's an astronomical number. And I ask you for, just give me a number, how many pictures are uploaded on Facebook a day? Any idea? 100 million? How much? It's less than a billion, but we're headed there. 450 million pictures a day. What do you think the most popular word was in the United States in the year 2013?
Like?
No.
Selfie.
Selfie. Right? So selfie became the most, selfie. Do you know what a selfie is? It's when you take a tilted picture of yourself, right? You hold the camera and you take a picture of yourself. Now, that to me, I mean, I just can't imagine that I don't want to take a selfie and put it up there. But of the selfies that are taken, you know, it's easy to blame all the teenagers and people with all the high technology in their hands, but 25% of those pictures are taken by people over the age of 45. All right, so this me, I want to show myself. And you know, Margaret Thatcher years ago made a comment. She says, if you have to tell people you have power, you don't. Right? So if I have to start putting pictures out there of how cool, how great, how attractive I am, then probably there's a good signal that all those things are missing, and now I'm trying to overcompensate. And so I look at these kids today that I get to work, you know, I get to work in high schools and as we said, jails, and I'm building businesses, and life is pretty good. But one of the things that they're missing is to have a tool in their own lives to adjust their sails. Because you know, when a kid is born, you hold them in your hand and you think, wow, this is the next president or prime minister. And most of us start off with the same feelings, the same attitudes about those kids. I'm going to make sure that this kid is on the right path and they're going to achieve things. And then life starts to happen. And we realize that other people and other events start to have an effect on the path of our children. When I worked there, when I lived in the U.S., I lived in Dallas for a while. I don't know how many of you have ever been to the great city of Dallas. But I had a life-changing experience because I got the opportunity to work with a gentleman who's got his own TV show today in the U.S. Now that's no small feat to have your own TV show. His name is Dr. Phil. And it was an incredible experience. That was well before he was on television. And it was an incredible experience to work with somebody who understood human behavior to the degree that he understood. And he wrote a great book about life strategies. And in it he talks about, you could draw a line in the sand, mostly in anybody's life, and you could reduce that life at any given moment to probably, and don't get hung up on the numbers, but 5 key events, 6 decisions, and 7 people that they met. And so you can see that it doesn't take a tremendous amount of influence to alter the direction that somebody's life might go. But if I can get them ignited with their passion, and I can get them, my son is signaling that it's coming up to the end, and if I can get them to start to use their passion as a way to serve others, then I can create momentum in that child's life. And the sooner I can do that, the better. And maybe I do that at an early age, maybe it's in teenage age. But even I've got a teenager, and sometimes I feel like we're not even on the same planet. But I tell you what, I will not give up because I heard years ago a wonderful saying when I was in a huge, if you ever lived in Dallas, you go to a Baptist church, even if you ever go there regularly, you go once. And the guy said, he said something which just struck me and I never forgot. He said, I would rather see a sermon than hear one. And that struck so hard that, how many times we don't live the life that we expect our children to live. And so I work with kids who have cancer, and I try to make their wishes come true. And what I do when we take this kid with a wheelchair to the Pope or to France, I take my kids with me. I don't say anything about it, but I let them help push the wheelchair. And I'm sure that those 2 days that they spend together with those kids is somewhere in the deepest part of their souls. And they realize that life ain't fair, and life ain't great for everybody. So when I get into this selfie mode and I start feeling sorry for myself, I get exposed to somebody, or I think back to some of the other people who I've experienced and the hardships that they have, and it tends to put things into my perspective. So what I try to encourage others to do is absolutely find in their own lives, because it's easy for me to tell my kid, get serious about your passion. But I ask, how many adults are serious about their passion? Do they have a passion? And if I, the Hungarian saying that I'm preaching water and drinking wine. Kids don't want that. They'll do what I say until 15, and they'll do what I do after 15. And so if I set the example, and I start to live for my passion, they'll live for it too. Let me end by saying a true story. California, high school, the principal calls the father and says, I need to see you. The father shows up in the principal's office. He says, sit down. Closes the door and he says, we got a problem. He says, your son has started to steal. He's stealing a notebook, and he's stealing an eraser. And I think we need to nip this in the bud before it gets any worse. The father leans back in the chair and starts getting really angry with his son. He says, I can't believe why my son would do that. I can't believe why he would steal. If he told me what he needed, I'd bring it home for him from the office. And little do we realize that so many times, the behavior that we see in our kids is many times modeled after the behavior that we show. And there's just simply no substitute for being consistent, where what I ask and what I do are congruent. And so that's what I dedicate my life to. When I'm not trying to build businesses, I'm trying to help other people find a way to raise the sales in their lives, and figure out a way to adjust it, because things are going to change. That's a whole different topic. They're going to change quickly. And if we give these teenagers that are struggling today, we can give the right tools to make those adjustments going forward. Last night the speech was about living to 120. Last year's May front cover of National Geographic was about a child who was born in that month who lived to 120. And so the value of these skills has just dramatically increased, and it is upon us to do whatever we can, even with our struggling teenagers, to make sure that the example is there, and I can honestly refer to that, and at least in their own minds, to the woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. William is staying for lunch.
Yes.
So, if anyone would like to speak with him, I'm sure he'd be delighted to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.